one elk quarter, a jug of grain spirits, an iron pot on a cold hearth, and 94 days between a trapper named Isaac Renfro and the spring thaw of 1847. He walked out of that shake-roof cabin in the Absaroka Range in March. 20 LEB Sinner, and he had not gone hungry a single night of it. One elk, 94 days. If your family ever put food by for winter, and you couldn't do it today to save your life, listen to me. Neighbor, most folks in this country right now couldn't stretch a full freezer of grocery store meat past 6 weeks. And they've got a working refrigerator and a paved road to the store. That's not an insult. Friend, that's the shape of what we lost. But here's the twist. Renfro wasn't a genius. He wasn't lucky. He knew 25 things his grandsons don't. And every single one of them still works today in your kitchen, in your yard, on your ridge. Right now, every one of them was written down, taught out loud, passed hand to hand for 200 years. And every one of them got quietly walked out of American life on a specific date by a specific hand. Because there was no money in you knowing, I'm going to give them all back to you. And number 4 is the one they worked hardest to bury. Some of what I'm about to count down is category level illegal in your county today. And I'll tell you where the line is when we get there. Some of it, a university spent 2 years confirming beats what you're paying for at the outdoor store right now. And number 4, a federal agency classified that one a public health hazard in 1958. And I'm not touching it till we're most of the way down this ridge. Number 11, fewer than 200 people in this country can still do properly. Number 17 will cost you less than a cup of coffee and outlast a $400 sleeping bag. None of these faded because they quit working. They faded because somebody got rich the day you forgot them. That's not on you. Friend, they were good at selling. Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number. 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. My grandfather's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money. It was knowing I am a 7th generation on this ridge, and before the elders died, they made me swear that knowing wouldn't die with me. So I set it down. All right, back to it. Rendering every scrap. The bone and hoof stock. Your great-grandmother never threw a bone away. Neither did Isaac Renfro in that cabin. She'd take the knuckle, the marrow, the hoof if she had one, the neck vertebra of a rabbit, throw it in cold water with a splash of vinegar, and let it walk on a low heat for 18 hours. What came off it was gelatin, minerals, and calories you can't buy in a package. A dime's worth of scraps made a gallon of the same broth Whole Foods sells for $8 a quart today. They didn't outlaw it. They just made sure your mother never learned it, because Campbell's soup wasn't going to be Campbell's soup if you knew how easy it was. Adime. A gallon. 18 hours. Nothing wasted. That one, they only crowded out. The next one, they wrote a rule against cold smoking meat over hardwood in a barrel rig. Look at those 7 strips hanging over the pot and the ham above them. That's not decoration. That's 40 days of food from one afternoon of work. Renfro's crowd would kill a deer in November, hang the quarters in a barrel with a smoldering hickory fire vented in from a side pit. And 40 days later, they had shelf-stable protein that kept without a refrigerator through the whole winter. A pound of hardwood chips did what $100 of freezer electricity does now. Then, the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act came in, and by 1910, the meat packer cartel had lobbied cold smoke home, curing into a public health concern. And Armour and Swift had the market to themselves. The 2019 United States Department of Agriculture review confirmed that a proper cold smoke and salt cure runs safe past 90 days. Hickory, salt, time. Nothing electric. The smokehouse geometry. Heat low. Smoke high. Meat cool. Renfro didn't have a smokehouse. He had a barrel. But the men who built cabins in the 1830s built a separate shed with the fire pit dug 6 ft outside the wall, and a clay pipe running underground into the smoke chamber. The whole trick is the smoke arrives cool, 90 degrees. No hotter. Hot smoke cooks the meat, and it rots in a week. Cool smoke cures it, and it hangs a year. That geometry was in every farm manual through 1910. Then it got called a fire hazard by rural insurance underwriters in the 1930s. And by 1955, you couldn't get a homeowner policy on a place with a working smokehouse. So they came down 90 degrees. 6 ft of pipe. 100 years of dinners. That's how you keep the meat. Rendering tallow and lard for cooking. Candles. And skin. Every ounce of fat off every animal Renfro shot went into the iron pot on that tripod. Low heat. Slow melt. Strained through a linen cloth into a crock, and that crock sat in the corner of the root cellar for a year without going off. One deer gave him 3 lb of tallow. 3 lb cooked his cornmeal for 2 months. Waterproofed his boots. Greased his rifle and lit his cabin. Then in 1911, Procter & Gamble put Crisco on the shelf and spent 60 years telling the American housewife that animal fat would stop her heart. Penn State confirmed in 2018 that lard's fat profile is actually healthier than the shortening that replaced it. They didn't ban the pot on your stove. They just made sure you'd feel like a fool for using it because there was no money in you rendering your own trayela. 2 months? 0 wasted. Grease built the household economy, banking the night fire so it's still red at dawn. Renfro didn't relight his fire 94 mornings running. He banked it. Last thing before he slept, he'd rake the coals into a tight pile against the back wall of the hearth, cover them with a 2-in blanket of pure white ash from the sides, and shut the damper down to a whisper. 8 hours later, the ash was still hot, and one dry stick of kindling turned it back into a working fire in 90 seconds. No matches. No accelerant. No flint. Just discipline. Modern insurance underwriters started campaigning against overnight coals in the 1940s, and the wood stove industry pushed automatic thermostats and pellet feeders instead, because a man who can bank a fire doesn't need to buy the pellet feeder. Hush. Cold. Dawn heat. Free. First pattern break. Friend. Notice the shape of it. Every single one of these. The smoke. The tallow. The banked fire didn't die because it stopped working. Died because somebody with a factory needed you to stop doing it in your own kitchen. It gets worse from here. Number 17 is the one that'll make you angry. Pemmican. The concentrated food that fed a continent. Dried meat pounded to powder. Mixed 1-to-1 by weight with rendered tallow. Sometimes berries folded in. Packed into a raw hide bag or a hollowed section of gut. 3. 0 calories a pound. Kept 10 years without refrigeration. The Hudson's Bay Company ran the entire fur trade on it from 1670 to 1870. Renfro carried a 2 lb brick on his belt every day of that 94. Then, in 1958, the Delaney Clause and the industrial preservative rollout made shelf-stable food mean sodium nitrite and BHT, and pemmican got quietly ruled out of any commercial food category. The University of Wyoming ran the numbers in 2014 and confirmed properly made pemmican matches. Modern military ration density and shelf life at 1/10. The cost.
A pound.
10 years. 10 cents on the dollar. That was the food you carry. Salt pork and the year-long ham. Before refrigeration, a hog killed in November fed a family until the next November. The secret was salt cure. Not smoke. Fresh pork belly packed in a wooden crate with rock salt, brown sugar, and black pepper, weighted down, turned once a week for 6 weeks, then hung in the cellar wrapped in muslin. It hung there for 12 months and got better as it aged. A whole hog cost a farm dollar in feed and gave back 100 pounds of meat. The same 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act came for home-cured pork and armor, bought the market. The 2019 United States Department of Agriculture cold cure study found properly cured salt pork keeps over a year unrefrigerated with zero safety issue. 1 hog, $1, 1 year of meat. Nothing plugged in. Meat kept. Brain tanning a deerskin into buckskin. An old journal from the winter of '52 says plain as a nail. The animal has enough brain to tan its own hide. That is not folklore. That is chemistry. You flesh the hide. Soak it in a warm slurry of the deer's own brain, mashed into water. Work the lecithin into the skin fibers for 2 days. Then smoke it over a low fire to set it. What you get is a hide softer than any leather you can buy. Water resistant. Breathable. Warmer than wool. And lasts 30 years of hardware. The Smithsonian Folklife Inventory in 1972 counted fewer than 200 people in this country still doing it right. It didn't get outlawed. It just got called filthy by the leather goods industry after 1900 because a factory can't compete on a hide. The hunter tanned in his own yard. 1 brain, 1 hide, 30 years. The wool and oilcloth bedroll that beats a $400 down bag. Here's the one I promised you. In Sears Roebuck's 1897 catalog, a heavy factory wool blanket ran $3.25. About a day and a half of wages. Renfro slept 94 nights on the ridge with 2 of them and a sheet of linseed oiled canvas underneath. The wool traps warmth even when it's wet. The oilcloth stops ground moisture. Together, they weigh less than a modern bag and don't fail catastrophically when they get wet the way down does. Today, REI will sell you a $400 down bag that becomes a wet noodle in a rainstorm. 2 wool blankets and a scrap of oilcloth cost you $15 at an estate sale and last 40 years. Nobody outlawed it. The outdoor gear industry just spent the 1970s onward selling you technical fabric with a markup. They don't advertise. 2 blankets. 1 oilcloth. 40 years. File. Second pattern break. You feeling it yet? Every one of these had a factory behind the forgetting. Not a cabal. Not a plot. Just markets doing what markets do. You bought the $400 bag. So did half the county. That's not on you. Clean body. Clean cabin. Now, the tools that kept the cabin standing, making lye soap from wood ash and rendered fat. Rain-leached wood ash makes potash lye. Lye combined with rendered fat makes soap. Every homestead had a soap day once a season, and 1 afternoon of work made a year of soap for a family of 10. It cost the fat you'd have thrown out and the ash from your own fire. Then Colgate-Palmolive and Lever Brothers consolidated the American soap market in the 1920s. Spent 30 years telling housewives homemade soap was crude and dangerous. And by 1955, it was a novelty. Crisco pushed the fat out of the kitchen first. It's the same reaction they use in the factory. Same chemistry. Same soap. 1 saved fat. 1 bucket of ash. 1 year of clean. Sharpening on a whetstone so the edge lasts a lifetime. A properly sharpened knife. Hatchet. Axe. Or plain blade will hold an edge through a full day of hard work and only needs a strop to come back. It was taught in every American shop class from 1900 to 1971 when the curriculum reforms cut hand tool literacy in favor of career readiness. A whetstone costs $12 and lasts 40 years. A disposable utility blade costs you $4 a month forever. Somebody did the math on that, friend. And it wasn't you. Juan's tuelitos. 40 years. One edge. A sharp edge on a rotten handle is a broken tool. Fitting an axe helve from local hickory. Every axe head in the eastern woods until 1920 was hung on a helva the owner shaped himself out of a piece of straight grain. Hickory cut in winter and dried 2 years. Fit, right? That helve outlasts 3 axe heads. A factory helve cracks in 2 seasons because the grain runs wrong. An old axe in the corner of my cabin has been on the same helve since 1949. The same 1971 curriculum cut that killed the whetstone killed this. 2. Insurance and OSHA lobbied hard against homemade tools through the 1960s under the shape of workplace safety. 2-year dried hickory, 1 helve, 3 axe heads, 76 years. Snow melt water and the birch bark filter. Renfro never boiled water. He didn't need to. Fresh snow melted slowly in the iron pot next to the banked coals gave him 3 quarts a day, clean from a source no factory could contaminate. When the snow ran shallow, he'd draw from a creek through a cone of rolled birch bark packed with clean sand and charcoal from his own fire. 200 years of American frontiersmen drank filtered river water without a case of dysentery worth writing down. Then, in 1974, the EPA quietly issued guidance discouraging home rainwater and cistern use. And Brita and Pure walked in behind them. They'll sell you a $400 filter. Charcoal, sand, and gravel did it for 200 years. You bought the $400 filter. So did half the county. Ain't your fault, they're good at selling. Third pattern break. We're past the halfway. Every one of these is quieter than the last. Number 4 is coming. That's the federal one. Stay with me. Number 4 is the one they worked hardest to bury. Reading the sky and the ridge without a device. Renfro knew a storm was 3 hours out by the way the smoke bent at his chimney, the way the deer moved lower down the ridge, and the ache in his old knee. Every farmer, sailor, and mountain man before 1950 read weather off the land the way you read a road sign now. The National Weather Service was founded in 1870, but private commercial forecasting only took off in the 1980s. And now you pay a subscription to know something the sky is telling you for free. Smoke, animals, joints, free, accurate, older than the Republic, weather in the air, following a game trail and reading a track. Fewer than 200 people in this country can still cold track a deer through mixed terrain without dogs and read what the animal was doing. When and why? That's the Smithsonian's own number from that 1972 Folklife survey. Renfro tracked in snow, in mud, in leaf litter, and off-bent grass. He read the depth of the print to know the animal's weight, the stride to know its speed, the scat to know what it had eaten and when. Nobody outlawed it. The commercial hunting guide industry made it their proprietary product after 1960, and the state game commissions built licensing regimes that made unguided hunting look reckless. 200 people. 200 years of knowing. One licensed guide who charges $400 a day for what your great-grandfather did before breakfast. Harvesting dead-standing wood. Not living trees. A dead-standing hardwood tree already seasoned by the sun on the stump gives you firewood that burns hot, clean, and dry the day you cut it. Greenwood is a waste of an axe. Every woodlot in the eastern hills was managed for standing dead first. Live cuts only on rotation. The 1898 Curtis Act and the timber industry land grab that followed broke the communal woodlot economy. And by the 1930s, Americans were buying delivered cordwood by the truckload instead of walking their own 100 acres. Dead-standing hickory burns at 27 million BTU per cord. Free, seasoned, standing, waiting. Nobody sold it because nobody had to sell it to you. Flint and steel and the charcloth fire. Strike a piece of high-carbon steel against a chip of flint, and a spark falls orange into a scrap of charcloth. A square of cotton scorches black in a tin, and it catches instantly. From that ember, a nest of dry inner bark, a breath, and a flame. Renfro started every morning fire that way for 94 days. Coleman built a billion-dollar company on butane lighters and treated log fire starters that only exist because you forgot the flint. An old note in the margin of a 1961 page says, "The man who can start a fire in the rain owes nothing to any store." Flint, steel, charcloth, forever, fire made. Frontier medicine chest, spirits, honey, garlic, willow. That jug in Renfro's hand in the picture? I told you it wasn't for drinking. Grain spirits at 80 proof or better dissolve plant medicines, kill wound bacteria, and store for decades. His whole medicine chest was 4 things: a jug of clear spirits for wound wash and tincture base, a jar of raw honey for burns and coughs, a braid of garlic for infection, and a bundle of willow bark for fever. Cost him nothing after the still. The pharmaceutical industry consolidated between 1900 and 1938, and by law made every one of those a folk remedy, meaning unsellable at the pharmacy counter. Spirits distillation is federally regulated now. That's real. I'm not your lawyer, but the medicine itself was documented in the United States Pharmacopoeia through 1926. 4th patent break. We're in the deep water now. What's coming is the one somebody actually made illegal, not just made you forget. Number 4 is next after 2 more. That's the one from the federal decree in 1958. The winter trap line. Fur economy and the daily route. Every mountain man from 1800 to 1940 ran a trap line in winter. 20 to 40 sets checked every 3rd day on a route he walked in a loop from the cabin on good winter of muskrat. Minks, marten, and beaver paid the year's cash needs. The 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act didn't touch trapping directly, but the commercial fur licensing that came with it, plus the 1970s anti-fur campaigns, dismantled the small operator. My first winter running my own line, I was 19, and I lost 11 sets in a row to a rain that froze over my triggers. An elder sat me down on the porch and said 3 words. "You'll do better." He was right. Second winter. I ran clean. Trapping is heavily regulated by state now. And I'm not your game warden. Learn your county's rules before you set a single trap. But knowing how is not the same as doing it. And knowing how is what was passed to me. Willow bark tea and the bark. Cambium, starvation food. Renfro chewed willow bark for the ache in his knee and for fevers. The active compound is salicin, which your body converts to salicylic acid. The same chemistry Bayer sold as aspirin starting in 1899. The Centers for Disease Control published a review in 2020 confirming birch and willow bark preparations carry the same active mechanism at a fraction of the concentration. In a lean spring, the inner cambium of a birch or pine is edible, sweet, and calorie-dense, a starvation food that kept whole native and settler families alive through hunger gaps. Bayer's patent expired long ago, but the pharmacy counter still charges you $8 for a bottle of what grows on every creek bank. Willow, fever, free medicine from the bark, root cellaring, the cold pantry underground, a hole in the ground 4 ft deep. walled with stone, covered with a thick door of oak. Holds a steady 38 degrees year-round without electricity. Potatoes keep 8 months. Apples 6. Carrots in damp sand 5. Onions in mesh 7. Cabbage buried in straw 4. Renfro's ancestors had a cellar under every farm and cabin. Refrigerator sales started in 1927, and by 1955 the root cellar was a joke on television. The house builder stopped building them. GE and Frigidaire took the market. Yet, the United States Department of Agriculture Cold Storage Guide from 2016 still recommends root cellar temperatures as the gold standard for produce longevity. 38 degrees. 0 electricity. 9 months of food. Food kept. Pemmican adjacent. The sourdough starter that outlived its baker. Here's the one from the hook. In 1958, the Delaney Clause reshaped what could be sold as food, and the industrial bakery lobby leaned in behind it. And the traditional wild yeast sourdough starter that every frontier household kept alive on a shelf near the hearth got quietly reclassified as inconsistent, unregulatable, unsanitary. It wasn't outlawed on your counter. It was outlawed on any commercial shelf, which meant nobody sold you the starter. Nobody sold you the technique. And within one generation, nobody knew. Renfro's sourdough biscuit was leavened by a starter his grandfather had kept alive for 40 years. Wild yeast, flour, water, warmth, costs nothing, feeds forever. A 2019 University of California study confirmed sourdough fermentation breaks down gluten and phytates in ways commercial yeast doesn't. And the digestive difference is real. 40 years! 1 jar. Free bread every day of it. The chinked log wall and the earth-bermed north side. Renfro's cabin held 55 degrees inside on a night that was 20 below outside. And he wasn't burning a pile of wood to do it. The trick was the wall. 8 in logs, chinked with a mud and straw daub, and the whole north wall banked with earth to the eaves. Thermal mass on the cold side. Insulation everywhere else. A frontier cabin used a quarter of the firewood a modern stick frame house uses per square foot on the same night. The 1930s building codes required stud walls and 1:12 in insulation. And the lumber industry got a market it hadn't had before. A cabin that heats itself on a quarter of the fuel isn't good for the wood pellet business. Height in of log. Earth on the north. 55 inside, 20 below outside. Cabin built. Seed saving from the strongest plant every year. Every farm and every homestead saved seed from the best plant in every row and planted it next year. 10 generations in. That seed was adapted to your dirt, your rain, your bug pressure. It was worth more than money. Then Monsanto's utility patents, starting in 1980, and Terminator gene research through the 1990s, turned seed into a subscription product. And by 2010, the seed you plant is legally not yours to save. It's a market shape, not a plot. But the effect is the same. Your grandfather's tomato is gone. USDA's own germplasm bank at Fort Collins holds seeds we lost from open circulation because nobody in your county saved them anymore. Best plant every year. 10 generations. Yours. That's 24 things Renfro knew. Every one of them alive. Every one of them yours if you want them. But there's one more, and it's the one that holds all the others up. Sovereignty. Not survival. Not prepping. Sovereignty. The condition of a man or a woman who does not need to buy what they know how to make, does not need to rent what they know how to build, does not need to ask permission of an industry or an agency to eat, to warm themselves, to heal a fever, to sleep dry through a snowstorm. That is what Renfro was. He wasn't poor, friend. He was sovereign. Every skill I just counted down is a single stone in that wall. Renfro came out of the Absaroka in March of 1848. He lived to be 79. He raised 4 children on that same ridge, and he taught each of them all 25 of these things. The record of his winter, written in his own hand, sat in a Wyoming Historical Society archive until 1974. The same year the EPA rainwater rule went out. Somebody noticed. Somebody put the record back on the shelf. That's what a keeper does. You're one of them now. I'm not selling you fear, friend, and I'm not selling you paranoia. Some of what I laid down tonight, the law looks at sideways, depending on your state, your county, your specific patch of ground. Trapping has seasons. Distillation has permits. Foraging has rules. I'm telling you the shape of what was, not writing you a permission slip. Learn your local line before you cross it. Now, here's what I want from you. Pick one. Just one. Not all 25. Not 5. One this week. Save every ounce of bacon grease in a mason jar in the fridge. Or simmer a bone stock this weekend from the chicken carcass you'd have thrown out. Or bank your fireplace tonight the way I told you and see if there's a coal in the morning. Or buy a $12 whetstone and put an edge on your kitchen knife. One thing. Then next week, another. That's how the wall goes up. I ran the stock myself the first week back on this ridge after the funeral. 3 gallons out of a carcass I'd have thrown away in town. Fed me 8 days. Cost me nothing but the salt. First stone in my own wall. Tell me down below, which of the 25 did your grandparents do? Which one did somebody almost pass down to you and didn't quite finish? The one that gets the most comments is the one I build the deep dive on next. Isaac Renfro knew every one of these. Your granddad knew most of them. Somebody just didn't get the chance to hand them down to you. Now they're yours again. Don't let them die on the shelf a second time. Next time on this ridge, there's a 2-cent pantry ingredient our great-grandmothers kept in a tin above the stove that did the work of 11 different products you're paying $20 a month for right now. It got quietly walked off the shelf in 1962, and the industry that replaced it made a fortune. I'll count them all down. If you're new here, this is what we do on the ridge. We put the old ways back on the shelf where they belong. One video at a time. One skill at a time. Stay if that's the work you want to be part of. Keep the old ways. They kept us. If this story changed the way you look at the forgotten skills of the past, please subscribe and like the video. We are unearthing the history they tried to bury. Plant the future. The next treasure will soon be revealed.